Okay, let's rock and roll. So, one of the interesting things that Beauvoir points out is that there are numerous faults that are particular to women. Now, the list she gives us might not line up as much with our own folk psychological sense of what these faults might be, but it's not going to be too hard to update the list. So, here's a quote. She says, "Many of those faults from which women are reproached, mediocrity, laziness, frivolity, servility, simply express the fact that their horizon is closed." Can anyone think of any other faults, particularly womanly faults? Women are so emotional. Yeah?
Or,
No, please.
or like you're like a biatch if you're on your period or something. Like
Yep.
that.
Good? Yeah. Biatch when you're on the rag. Good.
There's a typical like indecisiveness. Where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know.
Indecisive. Very good. So here's the interesting point that we can draw from these kinds of lists. When one space of agency is closed off or circumscribed narrowly, then one sense of possibility is also circumscribed. Thus, it's going to affect how the world appears to you. What seems salient, what seems reasonable, what seems possible, which then is going to condition your behavior. And the existential angst of this kind of narrowing down is profound, it's generational, and to use Merleau-Ponty's term from last class, it's deeply sedimented. In the body. Yeah?
I hear the term existential angst a lot, but I actually don't know what it means.
Existential angst is a Heideggerian term. It refers to its anxiety, right? The German word is Angst. It has a straightforward English correlated angst. In the translation of Heidegger's work that we read, it was translated as anxiety. So anxiety about one's potential for being in general. Now, the point that's being made here is that if you remember in Heidegger's analysis of anxiety, we see that Dasein is anxious as a structural feature of their own capacity to individuate in an alienated way from any of the potential concrete situations. And then further, that anxiety is further entrenched by the fact that death is the horizon of all possibilities for Dasein. And so what's happening here is we see that there is a kind of anxiety particular to the situation of women, born of this generational, sedimented closing down and circumscription of possibilities. And this is important to understand from a contemporary perspective. This is why when you change laws, everything doesn't get better. We abolished slavery. Racism's over now. Wrong. Women got the vote. Sexism is over now. Nope. Why? Why is that? Because even if we can get together in a room and collectively talk to each other and come to an agreement that we need to make laws to protect people who have otherwise, up until this point, not been protected. Well, what are we protecting them from? Ourselves and our habitual behaviors. This is why you can't think yourself out of smoking cigarettes. Because the habit is so deeply ingrained. This is why, just because you have a black friend, it doesn't mean you aren't a racist. Just because you're really nice to your spouse doesn't mean you aren't a sexist. Why? Because the habits that you participate in are enculturated at such a deep level that even if you happen to be lucky enough to be educated to the point that you come to have an explicit intellectual opinion about the right things, that doesn't necessarily entail that you have the self-awareness to change your habits. That's a deeper project. That's a multi-generational project. You know why it's a multi-generational project? Let me give you an example. This has been on my mind, so it's topical. How many people saw Wonder Woman? Just came out. Some saw it. No one saw it. Okay. Did anyone see Mad Max Fury Road when it came out? That's a no from Cameron. So Dorcas saw Mad Max. I saw Mad Max. Did anyone else see Mad Max? No? Yeah. You saw Mad Max, right?
I've seen it, not in theaters.
Who cares where you saw it? You saw it. You saw the movie. It's a cool movie, right? It's a good movie. Why did people get excited about this movie?
Because it was very feminist oriented.
Okay, so one at a time.
But it was because the lady that was in, I didn't see it.
Okay. So, yeah. So, what's her name again?
Charlize Theron.
Charlize Theron. Thank you. Yes. The main protagonist of the film is Charlize Theron, who is a
African American actor.
one-armed badass vigilante. That's not this movie got hyped. And it's the same reason that Wonder Woman is getting hyped right now. Like you didn't even see Wonder Woman. That movie is getting hyped right now. Why? Okay, Thomas.
The leading role played by female.
Okay, but there's lots of movies that have leading roles of women.
It's supposed to be empowering. That's the lead. I saw a commercial today for Wonder Woman. The lead tagline was an empowering movie for all.
Okay. Yeah, Lou, please.
She shot some action scenes where she was pregnant.
That's pretty badass. Okay, cool. But that's a fact about the movie, right? And an interesting fact that makes cool. But why is this movie blowing up right now? Okay, Karen.
Because she is a superhero as opposed to somebody else saving her.
Okay, good. Yes.
Because Hillary Clinton just went to Donald Trump and feminism is just on in the public eye right now.
Okay, good. So there's larger sociocultural reasons why this movie is important right now? Yeah?
Talking about Mad Max or Wonder Woman?
Both.
Okay.
The same movie as far as I'm
Wonder
concerned.
Woman is very much a kind of test to see if women are marketable, but there was a lot of expectation for this. There was this idea that you can't market women, and they're like, yes, we can. And then they got this African American lady to direct the film, and it's basically do or die for her. And she did, and it's blowing all these records, and now it shows that women can perform as well at the box office as men. All these ideas are shattered, and it's funny because they didn't contract her to do a second one right away. So now that this movie has done so well, the director will be able to leverage a lot more money.
Okay, good. Now, let's take a step back. What are these movies? I'm going to give you a spoiler alert for Mad Max, okay? Here's what happens. They drive in one direction, and then they stop and they come back. That's the whole movie. And then they shoot a bunch of people along the way. I'm not joking. That's what happens in the movie. They get on a train of cars, and they drive through the desert until they run out of gas, and then they go, shit, we need more, we got to go back to where we came from. And they turn around and they go back. That's the movie. I ruined it. I know. But it just so happens that the people driving the cars are women. And Mad Max, that guy's just a passenger in that movie. It's really funny they even called the movie Mad Max. Gerard Butler's Mad Max is just some guy barely speaks, he's just kind of confused. And just follows Charlize Theron around and does all the work. Which is cool, right? But here's what's interesting. People are losing their minds, right? We've broken this. We can market women. Oh my God, it's a revelation. And here's what they did. They made an action movie where someone blew some shit up, and they drove a little while, and they blew stuff up, and then they came back, and they blew things up on the way back. Wonder Woman, I haven't even seen the movie, I can tell you what it is. I feel bad for people. I'm going to go fight the evil people in the war and win. The end.
Superhero.
It's a superhero movie. And in that movie, they have what? able-bodied women doing shit.
That's a good film title.
And everyone loses their minds. Why? Because we live in a world where a representation of a woman having the same level or an increased level of agency as a man typical role, doing things and winning, is somehow massive progress. That's the world we live in, where that is progress. That's groundbreaking. That there could be a strong woman who won a fight. Oh my God. Mind blown. The critics are raving. Woman kicked ass in a fight. Mind blown. That's the world you live in. That is a messed up world. It is a messed up world where the idea that we can sell a movie in which a woman does a thing that a dude normally does is somehow a radical feminist victory. That's how far we have to go. That's what I meant when I said these patterns are generational. Because we live in that pattern, and we live in a period where that pattern is manifesting itself in that way. Where what counts as amazing new ground broken is woman fights bad guys and wins. And somehow that is a ground-shattering achievement in popular media representation of women. That's the world you live in. That's why you need feminism. Okay, Thomas.
But isn't that revelation like 35 years late? Because the TV show.
It's way too late.
No, I'm saying like
2,000 years
it wouldn't.
Go ahead.
This is the point being like, if the idea is we have this revelation now, what will the generation previous to our own? There's a TV show, and like, wouldn't you have thought that?
You might have thought.
That something would have come about.
Yeah, but this is the point, right? Like, that's your privilege. Right there. That's exactly your privilege. You're like, oh, well, isn't it? I thought we were, yeah, well, exactly. Aren't we way further ahead than this? No. No. We're really not. That's the point. Yeah, go ahead, Veronica.
Isn't like even if we get or like even if it's publicly accepted that women can do all the things that men can do, I think there would still be a problem because the bodies of women and men are different, and there must be some kind of differences that come with the kind of things that men and women can do. And this is not about like lifting things. This is it's just making the kind of the ultimate goal of an able woman, the kind of things that men can do, seems lacking for me. It seems that it's trying to make a woman a man, which is also like it's a little bit for me.
Interesting. Okay, go ahead, Cam. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, so if you read Iris Marion Young, she says, she lists a whole bunch of things that women are bad at, and saying that you have to throw like a girl and all this stuff. But if you read this line right here, it says, women can stay in physical pain much better than men. But statistically speaking, people are like, girls are bad at fighting, girls are bad at this, girls are this. But women are exactly as capable, if not better, in some cases, at doing things like giving birth and staying in physical pain than men, and people believe that women are still lesser.
So there's that, but I think to speak, sorry, do you want to respond to that?
I think, but there's like, I know that, and I get it, but I think there's like more to what I'm saying, where it's like, it's saying that there are absolutely no differences between.
It's not. It's not saying that. There are all kinds of real differences. Here's the difference. I'll give you an example. It's an example I was talking with Adjoa about during the break. I will never know what it's like to be pregnant. I'll never know what it's like to breast or chest feed a child. I will not have that experience. Some of the people in this room could have that experience. Maybe you already have. I don't know. That's a real difference. And it has an impact on your experience. The process of going through giving birth radically changes your hormone profile and your brain chemistry. Does that mean that we can derive a normative statement about what makes a person's life proper? No. That's the point. There are all kinds of biological differences, but even evolutionarily concretized biological differences are just shifting sands. There's no reification in evolutionary biology, right? All categories in evolutionary biology are fluid. That's what evolution is, right? It's the changing of organismal form over time based on reproductive success. The entire point that all of these thinkers are making is that it is a category mistake to infer from a biological difference a fundamental, inviolable psychological difference. And when we come back to the example of Wonder Woman, it's not that we're turning women into men. It's we're trying to say that there is no task that we might set a man that a woman cannot also take themselves if they should so desire. And like that's clearly a good thesis.
I understand your point more so as like some of the Beauvoir's points is like well, you're identifying women or like essentializing women as a sort of corollary to men or relative to men. Like there's always that contrast there rather than woman standing on its own as a concept as woman does, as man does. There's always that comparison, which is kind of shitty.
Yes, that's also right. But I think that part of what's going on here, in the media representation is that we're still taking baby steps. That's the point of the example. The point of the example is that Wonder Woman and Mad Max represent like massive strides forward. And the fact that they do should cause all of us to pause. Because, every one of us has had a thought, well, maybe it's not that bad. It is. It's pretty significant. Okay? All right, I want to press on here. I want to talk about Iris Marion Young. So, 2 more points from de Beauvoir, and then we're going to move on to Young. So, de Beauvoir says that woman holds the entire world responsible because it has been made without her. This is your point. And against her. She has been protesting against her condition since her adolescence, ever since her childhood. She has been promised compensations. She has been assured that if she would place her fortune in man's hands, it would be returned 100-fold, and she feels that she has been swindled. She puts the whole masculine universe under indictment. And yet, even under the banner of resentment, the burden of her situation is inalienable. Why? Because the body. Because the body is constantly subjected to the enculturated gaze of the situation that it is living in, and thus the body is a burden, worn away in the service to the species, bleeding each month, proliferating passively. It is not for her a pure instrument for getting a grip on the world, but an opaque physical presence. It is no certain source of pleasure, and it creates lacerating pains. It contains menaces. Woman feels endangered by her insides. It is a hysteric body. On account of those close connections of the endocrine secretions with the nervous and sympathetic systems that control the muscles and the viscera. That's the whole women are really emotional part. And yet, it is also her glorious double. She is dazzled in beholding it in the mirror. It is promised happiness, a work of art, a living statue. She shapes it, adorns it, and puts it on show. This is the heart of the matter. Why? Because the woman's body is always a subject and an object at the same time, and yet an object in 2 different ways simultaneously. It is an object that we she carries around resentfully, and it is an object she then tries to do up in order to pacify the gaze of that which oppresses. And one of the darker upshots of this complex interplay of objectivities is the heinous amount of violence that women suffer, because they constantly fail to meet the impossible middle along multiple axes. Every single woman in this class raised their hand when they were asked if they've ever been catcalled. We still live in a culture that can rightfully be called a rape culture. Because the statistical likelihood of a woman facing that kind of violence is astronomically high. We still don't know what it means to get consent. There's terrifying stories about people who have sex and they don't even realize the person isn't into it because they don't look at their face. They just don't look. Because they're just not paying attention to what's going on with the other person because they don't see them as a person. They see them as an object that they want to use to get pleasure. And so, having a woman's body means that you can reliably expect to be seen a certain way. And that it is dangerous to be seen that way. And that you can be blamed for that danger. Well, you were asking for it, you were dressed in a certain way. But this kid, he's got such a hopeful future. Well, he shouldn't have raped this person then. And yet the narrative we tell in popular media around these stories is though that poor kid, he made a mistake. And being aware of these facts, knowing them to be true, living in them, that will undoubtedly condition your cognition and your perception, thus affecting the basic contours of your meaningful world structure. That is, the world changes how it seems to you as a possibility space because of your conditions. And when your conditions are this pervasive, the effect it has on what shows up for you as relevant and meaningful is powerful. And that's exactly what Young is trying to talk about in her paper. In concrete, embodied terms. And so her approach is basically to take these general insights that de Beauvoir has been working with and to filter them through Merleau-Ponty's categories of embodied subjectivity to give us a visceral, precise, and frankly devastating analysis of what it's like for a woman to be simultaneously an embodied subject and a burdened and aesthetic object. So here's the main example. Throwing like a girl. What does it mean to throw like a girl? Let's work this through. If you say something, you kind of throw like a girl, what does that mean? What does that say about their style? Yeah.
It's basically throwing poorly, like you don't really know how to play the game or whatever.
Okay, good. So, first point is that it is a pejorative statement. It is not just a descriptive statement. Throwing like a girl is bad. It means you are failing to throw properly. It means that you don't understand the game, how to do it well. Good. What else? Let's get more precise. Yeah.
Can we include stuff from the reading?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I guess the focus on only the throwing arm and not incorporating any other parts of the body into the throw.
This is key. right? So the idea,
It's like you're trying to take
you
up
use
as little space as possible.
exactly, you're trying to use as little of yourself as possible. So you use the minimal amount of the body you need to get the job done. So you just, right? Throw it back.
Right here.
Like a girl. Watch. How different was that? How is it different? Describe the differences.
You build momentum with your leg, leaning into it.
Good. I used my leg. What else did I use?
All through,
Huh?
all through.
Follow through. Good. Describe it generally. What was the difference? If throwing like a girl is using the minimal amount of the body possible, what does it mean to throw properly? Say it louder.
The most.
That's right. I engaged my entire sensory motor apparatus. I pulled back. I used my legs to pull back. I followed through. My whole arm came up. My other arm for balance. I threw. My leg came off the ground as I threw. I followed through completely. My entire body was engaged in the action. That's a throw like a man. Young uses another example of crossing a river. If you remember reading that, where she said, you experience like trepidation. She's like, she knows she can do it, but she's like, oh, come on, just. Instead of just fully traversing the river with the full articulation of your sensory motor intentional arc of the body, the full capacity of your motor intentionality. How do we explain this difference? It can't be biological essentialism. It can't be there's some mysterious essence. Because throwing is something, you all have the capacity to do it. You might not have practiced enough to have the skill to do it well. You might not be going to, major baseball, like you're not going to be a professional baseball player. But everyone has the physical capacity to do it. So it can't be some essence. It can't be some intrinsic nature. So it has to be an acquired characteristic that's developed in us through enculturation. In Jung's words, every human existence is defined by its situation. The particular existence of the female person is no less defined by the historical, cultural, social, and economic limits of her situation. We reduce women's condition simply to unintelligibility if we explain it by appeal to some natural and ahistorical feminine essence. And in denying such feminine essence, however, we should not fall into that nominalism that denies real differences in the behaviors and experiences of men and women. It's simply understand what those real differences are. They are patterns in history. And so the key distinction here is between our situation, our condition, our habituation, and all the sedimented behaviors that come along with that on one side, and the essence or nature on the other. And so now we have the equipment to fully answer the objection that comes from the biological essentialist, which doesn't know there's like a thing that it is to be a woman. And we're so not over that narrative. What's the answer? Well, it means, the answer is this: history, habituation, and individual experience craft real patterns, real differences. But real patterns and real differences are changeable. And we have to always make choices about what the meaning of those differences will be. This is why you should always listen to your inner voice and hear what it has to say, but always recognize that you're making a choice about what the meaning of that will be. So when we talked about Heidegger, I made this point in terms of our feelings, right? We always have these deep feelings. We want them to tell us what to do. So I just figure out what I really feel, that'll just tell me what I have to do, and I don't have to choose, I just do what it tells me, because I know the real truth about me. Well, maybe, but ultimately, if that's the choice you make, you're choosing to interpret your feeling that way. That's fine, it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't go with your gut. Understand what it means to go with your gut. Similarly here, it's not to say there aren't real differences between men and women at the level of experience, and then we can trace those differences to how we're built, how we've lived. Understand that as a culture, as a society, as a collective, we make choices about what the meanings of those differences will be, and we have overwhelmingly chosen to interpret those differences in a way that encumbers women with an essence that if they deviate from, we kill them. It's really that stark. Okay, so how do we define femininity then? What does it mean to be a woman? If we have these distinctions on board, it means, says Young, that femininity designates not a mysterious quality or essence that all women have by virtue of being biologically female. It is rather a set of structures and conditions that delimit the typical situation of being a woman in a particular society, as well as the typical way in which this situation is lived by women themselves. This is really important because it helps us understand how patterns of behavior and patterns of trait distribution and behavioral capacities can give us a strong idea of what it's like, for the most part, to be a certain kind of person. But here's the important caveat. Namely, if you give me any essential property of what it means to be a woman, I will show you a man who has that property in higher quantity and quality than the average woman. And if you show me a property of what you think it means to essentially be a man, I will show you a woman who has that property in higher quality or quantity than the average man. And so we get averages, but not essences. Go.
What about like giving birth?
Right. So there are trans men who can give birth.
They can put a uterus in you?
No, you start as a uterus.
Okay. I was thinking backwards.
Yep. Yes, you were. Veronica, then Thomas.
I was just gonna say that I feel like a lot of where these stereotypes come from is the kind of the idea of beauty in society, because
Good.
for every like strong woman who is not submitting to the feminist stereotypes, there is a man who's able to see that as beautiful, you know. So I think that it's a double-sided thing where for men to be able to see women as beautiful in whatever state that women have to see men as beautiful in that whole spectrum, as opposed to just one thing. So it's like both genders affect each other, and it's not just one thing that has to change.
So that's, the last point is clearly right. So, and I don't think anything we've said tonight entails otherwise, right? So you're absolutely right that a lot needs to change on both sides, but I think the important point to keep in mind is that from this point of view, that from this analysis that we're taking on, we are trying to put our finger on systematic asymmetries and to think about how those asymmetries impact women's experience. Now that doesn't mean we can't do other kinds of analysis, but for the phenomenologist who's interested in feminist critique of the kind of phenomenology we've seen already, think about the context, right? So the phenomenology that we've seen, especially in Merleau-Ponty and Heidegger, is highly ableist in the sense that their attempt to describe the structure of being in the world in general eliminates and kind of disappears the kinds of asymmetries that these people are talking about that we're looking at tonight. And that's important. So that's not to say that we can't do the kind of philosophical feminism that looks at how both sides of the discussion need to modulate their contributions. But I think for the purpose of this course and for understanding where this feminist critique fits in to the narrative we've been developing in the course, it's really important that we focus on the asymmetries between experience of being a man and experience of being a woman. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think that the solution is in kind of, I guess phenomenology doesn't look at the solutions.
Well, it can, but like, look, just be careful, because part of what you're saying, not that you're going this way, but people use this kind of narrative to say, you know, rape prevention involves learning self-defense and not dressing scantily when you go out at night and traveling with friends. That's the story you hear when you grow up. Rape prevention. Why is it women's problem to prevent rape? You might think rape prevention is don't rape people. And the fact that our overwhelming narrative and how we enculturate people is focused on, it's your problem. I don't like how you're dressed. You didn't learn Kung Fu, and you should have been with a buddy. That's the reason it happened. No, it's not. Those are things that might have prevented it from happening, but that's not an analysis of why it happens. It happens because people rape people. And that's the reason that it's dangerous, actually, to say, oh, both sides need to think about how to change to make it better. I'm pretty sure that the people who are raping people need to just stop. And maybe we can do something to help create a culture where those kinds of behaviors are just trained out of us or something. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm not a psychologist. But what I am trying to do is give you a practical example for why the philosophical analysis takes the shape it does. Okay? All right, Thomas, go ahead.
Just to go back to Luke's point, and then
Which one? Luke had several points.
about Earth, and then your response regarding trans individuals.
Yes, right.
Isn't that just like an equivocation? Because it seems like what Luke's pointing to is not the socially determined or understood gender of the woman, but biological female being XX.
Right, okay, so there's
Well, but he said gender, not sex.
That's right, I was talking about
She
gender.
says biologically female.
Right, but what she's saying is that you cannot define a woman in virtue of her traits as being biologically female. That's the whole point, is that what it means to individuate a woman, or a man for that matter, is not simply a matter of biology. That's the whole point of this. Like, A, it's just true as a matter of fact that that what makes us what we are is more than simply our physiology. But then the further point that's being made here from the point of view of existential phenomenology, it's a category mistake to think that your conditions define your essence. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's why you can't point to biological differences as being constitutive of what it means to be a gender being. It's not to say they aren't relevant, they are, but it's not enough. Go ahead.
But like, so then you're saying, you just said that you can't look to your sociological condition to determine, to look at gender, but gender.
Right. Yes, that's what it is. Gender is a socio-psychological process of subjectivity creation. That's what gender is. I didn't deny that you can't look to culture to define gender. That's how gender is created. And then the normative question is are those conditions suitable to let people live healthy lives, or do we have overly restrictive and ignorant enculturation practices which systematically disenfranchise certain people who have atypical forms of gender expression? Hint, yes, you do. Right? So what's being denied here is that biology is sufficient to explain gender. That doesn't, and nowhere did I deny that cultural conditioning isn't relevant to the individuation of gender. It is central. It is absolutely central. Right? Part of what it is to be a man or a woman is to perform a certain version of yourself in the presence of others and to construct that performance in tacit response to your perceived expectations of, your perception of their expectations of you. That's how we build ourselves. That's what Arendt was talking about when she was talking about promises. Okay. Can it wait?
Sure.
Okay.
Everything can wait, really.
I want to get through done. We only have half an hour left. Okay. So, where are we here? Yeah. It says 3 there. It shouldn't. The formatting on my document got all wonky. It should be like a little bullet. I don't know why that happened. Anyways, so Jung starts with the basic point that de Beauvoir brings up, which was that there is, for women, a tension between immanence and transcendence. So, immanence is, as we know from our reading of Heidegger, is the immediate presence of something. And transcendence in the context of phenomenology is our capacity to move beyond ourselves in the world by acting. So transcendence here isn't like transcending the world by going above and beyond the world. It's to immerse oneself in the world and thereby go beyond oneself out into the meaning of the world that you live in. Okay? And so this tension that both Jung and de Beauvoir are honing in on is that it comes from the fact that women's bodies are objectified in various ways, as burdens and as aesthetic objects of consumption, and commodified to such an extent that their capacity to take up with their body in a way that fully engages with its transcendence towards a meaningful world is stymied by the presence of the immanent presence of the body. And so in Jung's words, the culture and society in which the female person dwells defines woman as other, as the inessential correlate to man, as mere object of immanence, and woman is thereby both culturally and socially denied the subjectivity, autonomy, and creativity that are definitive of being human, and that in patriarchal society are accorded the man. And at the same time, however, because she is a human existence. The female person necessarily is a subjectivity and a transcendence. And she knows herself to be. And thus the female person who enacts the existence of woman in patriarchal society must live a contradiction. This is, again, riffing on the point that we saw in de Beauvoir about living a paradox. As a human, she is free, a subject who participates in transcendence, but her situation as a woman denies her that subjectivity and transcendence. And so, this manifests in the lived experience of the body in 3 different ways, which then correlate to how the world manifests itself as a spatial horizon of possibilities for action. So the first ramification is at the level of bodily comportment. Bodily comportment here is just a $10 word that means how your body takes up with the world. It's our style or our way of putting our body into situations. If you want to get a sense of what this really means in a concrete sense, sit on a bench and watch people walk. Just watch them move. And watch the ways in which the tension in their shoulders, the angle at which they hold their head, and the distance between their feet when they walk, and how far they extend their arms when they walk, how that all aggregates dynamically into a unity that shows you who they are when you see them moving. How tense is their face? Where is they holding their, do they hold it here? Do they hold it here? And it's different. Every person is different. And so you see people when they move, they have a character or a style. That's how they comport themselves. And so, at the level of bodily comportment, Jung says that women have an ambiguous transcendence. The transcendence of the lived body that Merleau-Ponty describes is a transcendence that moves out from the body in its immanence in an open and unbroken directiveness upon the world in action. The lived body as transcendence is pure, fluid action. The continuous calling forth of capacities that are applied to the world. Rather than simply beginning in immanence, feminine bodily existence remains in immanence, or better, is overlaid with immanence, even as it moves up towards the world in motions of grasping, manipulating, and so on. What does that mean? It means that the body is always an object. It never attains the pure subjectivity of agency, which thereby affects our motility, our capacities for movement, how we actually move the body. And artist Marianne Young calls this inhibited motor intentionality. Women's bodies project an aim to be enacted, but at the same time stiffen against the performance of the task that would thereby terminate the aim. And in performing a physical task, the woman's body does carry her towards the intended aim, often not easily and directly, but rather circuitously, with the wasted motion resulting from the effort of testing and reorientation, which is the frequent consequence of feminine hesitancy. Perfect example of this is trying to cross the river, right? You kind of test the stone, but you're not really sure, and then you kind of take a little step, all that. And last, spatiality, the way in which our sense of the world is present to us and how we inhabit the space with our bodies. And this is manifest as a discontinuous unity. Namely, that the part of the body that is transcending towards an aim is in relative disunity from those that remain immobile. This is the point about the arm when you throw like a girl. That's why it looks so weird when you do it, because it's like you're not fully engaging your embodied self. You're just doing this minimal action, and that minimal action, while it is transcending towards the aim of throwing, creates a disunity with the rest of the body, because the hesitancy of our motility creates a gap between the action and the hesitancy of fully engaging in the action. And so the character of inhibited intentionality, whereby feminine motion severs the connection between aim and enactment, between possibility in the world and capacity in the body, itself produces a discontinuous unity. So make no mistake, the intentionality embodied in the throw and the rest of the body is still unified, but it's discontinuously unified. Because there's simultaneous action and resistance. So in summary, the three contradictory modalities of feminine bodily existence, ambiguous transcendence, inhibited intentionality, and discontinuous unity, have their root in the fact that for feminine existence, the body frequently is both subject and object for itself at the same time in reference to the same act. Go ahead, Tristan.
When Jung talks about discontinuous unity being a product of inhibited intentionality, does this discontinuous unity translate to Merleau-Ponty's concept of attention creating a perceptual gestalt?
Yeah, that's the next piece. Because part of what Jung is trying to show you is that the first thing she's trying to do is take you inside the body and show you the tension that comes with carrying around an object. And then once you feel that, then she's going to try and show you how this conditions your perceptual relation to the world and thereby affects how the world is manifest to you. Because what is the phenomenal world? It is a dynamic, reciprocal unity of perceptual agency and indeterminacies that are thereby rendered determinate through your interactions. And if your capacity to interact is inhibited in various ways, then those determinacies which you thereby carve out with your agency will be conditioned by that incapacity, thereby literally affecting the shape of the lived world in which you dwell. And so in this analysis, we see a sort of isomorphism with Merleau-Ponty's work, where we start with the bodily subject and then we move out to explain the spatial world that the body subject lives in. Thus, if there are particular modalities of feminine bodily comportment and motility, it must follow that there are also particular modalities of feminine spatiality. The two come together. And so, we have three more structures. The first is enclosure. The space that is physically available to the feminine body is frequently of a greater radius than the space that she uses and inhabits. Feminine existence appears to posit an existential enclosure between herself and the space surrounding her in such a way that the space that belongs to her and is available to her grasp and manipulation is constricted, and the space beyond is not available to her movement. This timidity, immobility, and uncertainty that frequently characterizes feminine movement projects a limited space for the feminine I can. So what seems possible in general and what seems possible for a particular subject who apprehends the general possibility are different. One is a limited subsection of the other. I want to take one step back here before we do the next two and just frame a worry. It's a worry that you might have had reading de Beauvoir, and it's a worry that might be coming up for you again going through this stuff. Understand, these analyses are not trying to essentialize women. As a woman, you might be thinking, that doesn't describe my experience. I don't have inhibited motor intentionality. I'm a professional athlete, and I fully inhabit my body. None of these analyses are counter-examples to any particular person having overcome general conditions. Okay? So it's the same point that we made about trying to define femininity and masculinity in terms of trait distribution. You find me any essential characteristic of being a man, I'll find you a woman who has that characteristic in higher quantity than the average man, and vice versa. Similarly, if these kinds of descriptions are meant to explain the general situation and character of female embodiment, that does not mean that we could not find any number of women who on any number of these structures is not encumbered by them. Remember, we're describing general conditions, not essences, which means particular individuals, based on their experience, their choices, their capacities that they've developed as an individual, could not overcome any one of these. The point is to describe a certain phenomenological law of averages that defines the female embodied experience as it is always and for the most part in this particular period of history. So when you read it, don't try to resist the feeling of being boxed in by it, especially if the description doesn't apply to you. Maybe you read this and you were like, yeah, holy cow, this really fits. And some other parts are like, no, that's completely consistent, right? You aren't wrong to feel that it doesn't fully describe your experience, and Jung isn't wrong to think that this is a general characteristic. Because the thing about general characteristics or statistical averages is that there's always individuals that don't fit into them. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right. So, number 2, dual structure. In feminine existence, there is a double spatiality, as the space of the here is distinct from the space of the yonder. A distinction between space that is yonder and not linked with my own body possibilities, and the enclosed space that is here, which I inhabit with my bodily possibilities, is an expression of the discontinuity between aim and capacity to realize the aim that I have articulated as the meaning of the tentativeness and uncertainty characterizing the inhibited intentionality of feminine motility. The space of the yonder is a space in which feminine existence projects possibilities in the sense of understanding that someone can move within it, but not I. Thus, the space of yonder exists for feminine existence, that only is that which she is looking into rather than moving in it. Think back to du Beauvoir talking about the way in which a woman lives inside a man's world, but is not fully able to live in it. So the idea here is that you have a certain abstract, virtual sense of the full horizon of the world, but your capacity to act within it is limited. And the neat thing about this particular analysis is that it's a recapitulation of du Beauvoir's view, but one that is concretely embodied. And so the idea is that in typical feminine bodily comportment, there is a sense of a limited sphere of action, and then a yonder, a further sphere in which one might act but not me. Why? Because I have inhibited motor intentionality. So that's the idea. And so the immediate space of the body takes up with the possibility space which surrounds the embodied subject in a fragmented way. So again, this idea that there's some kind of like continuous, fluid integration of subject and world is really what's in question here. The idea that there's a kind of puncturing or fragmentation between the immediate sphere of bodily agency and the full external sphere of possible meaningful movement. And this disconnect is manifest as a space of possible violence, compromising the pre-reflective sense of the I can that defines motor intentionality. And lastly, position. Feminine spatiality is contradictory, insofar as feminine bodily existence is both spatially constituted and a constituting spatial subject. Insofar as feminine existence lives the body as transcendence and intentionality, the feminine body actively constitutes space and is the original coordinate that unifies the spatial field and projects spatial relations and positions in accord with its intentions. That's just Merleau-Ponty. Right? That's review. But to the extent that feminine motility is laden with immanence and inhibited, the body space is lived as constituted. That is, to the extent that feminine bodily existence is self-referred and thus lives itself as an object, the feminine body does not exist in space. It is constituted by the space. This is an attempt to kind of give an embodied phenomenological analysis of du Beauvoir's point about literally feeling oppressed and feeling constricted in your possibilities by your situation. And to think about this in more concrete terms that might be relevant to you, the object of the woman's body is constituted by the woman's regard of her own burden and her own aesthetic capacity, but also by the gaze of the other. And so, your capacity to inhabit space is not just defined by your own agency, however fragmented that might be, but also by the objectification of the gaze of others, which then foists upon you a sense of your own body as an object that is beholden to the gaze of others. And so in summary, if feminine body spatiality is such that the woman experiences herself as rooted and enclosed, on the reversibility assumption, it would follow that visual space for feminine existence also has its closure of immobility and fixity. The objects in visual space do not stand in a fluid system of potentially alterable and interchangeable relations correlative to the body's various intentions and projected capacities. Rather, too, they also have their own places and are anchored in their immanence. And so this is what she's really trying to show you, is that insofar as you buy into the bodily analysis, you're also buying into an analysis of a certain way of conceiving of the world being shaped around you. And then it's our job as philosophers, and more importantly, socially conscious, ethical agents, to figure out what are the kinds of choices that we're making such that the world might appear this way to so many. And the answer is patriarchy. And so at the root of those modalities, I have stated in the previous section, is the fact that women lives her body as an object as well as a subject. That's review. The source of this is that patriarchal society defines woman as object, as a mere body, as that in sexist society, women are in fact frequently regarded by others as objects and mere bodies. An essential part of the situation of being a woman is that of living the